It was a cold winter night when Pete and his wife Carla arrived at the old house. They had just gotten married, and this was their first trip together. Pete's uncle had invited them to stay in his vacation home far away from the busy city. The house was big with tall windows and old wooden walls. It looked dark, and there were strange shadows in the corners. Pete and Carla felt a little uneasy, but they were excited for their adventure. Pete's uncle, who lived nearby, gave them a quick tour. He said,
"This house is old, but it's very special. Some strange things have happened here, but don't worry. It's all just stories."
Carla smiled nervously. She was excited, but the old house felt strange. There was something about it that made her feel like she wasn't alone. That night after dinner, Pete and Carla went to bed. The house was very quiet. There was no sound except the wind outside. But in the middle of the night, Carla woke up. She heard a sound, soft but clear. It was a low voice calling her name. "Carla, Carla," the voice whispered. Carla sat up in bed. She looked around, but there was no one there. She was sure she had heard it. Her heart began to race. She tried to sleep again, but the feeling of someone watching her wouldn't go away. She wanted to wake Pete, but she didn't want to scare him. She stayed still, listening for any more sounds, but all she could hear was the wind outside and her own heartbeat. The next morning, Pete asked Carla if she had slept well. Carla didn't want to tell him about the voice. She didn't want to seem silly, but she couldn't stop thinking about it. Later that day, Pete decided to explore the house. He went upstairs to the old attic. The wooden steps creaked under his weight. In the attic, he found a small box. It was covered in dust, and there were strange symbols on it. Pete opened the box and found an old photograph. It showed a woman standing in front of the house, smiling. But there was something odd about her smile. It was too wide, almost like she wasn't human. Pete felt a chill run down his spine. He quickly put the photo back in the box and closed it. He didn't want to stay in the attic for long. Something didn't feel right. When Pete went back downstairs, he noticed that Carla was acting strange. She looked pale and nervous, as if she had seen something frightening.
"Are you okay?"
Pete asked.
"I'm fine,"
she said quickly. But Pete could see that something was wrong. Carla looked at the window and then back at Pete.
"I keep hearing things. I think this house is haunted,"
she said. Pete didn't believe in ghosts, but there was something in Carla's eyes that made him doubt his own thoughts. He couldn't explain it, but he felt uneasy too. That night, as they lay in bed, the same voice whispered again. "Carla, Pete," it said. This time, Carla didn't hesitate. She jumped out of bed and ran to the door. Pete followed her, confused and frightened. They rushed out of the room and down the hallway. The house seemed darker than before. Shadows moved along the walls, and the air grew colder. They stopped in front of a door at the end of the hallway. It was the door to the attic. The door was slightly open, and they could hear a soft voice coming from inside. "Carla, Pete," it called again. Without thinking, they opened the door. What they saw inside made them both freeze in fear. Inside the attic, they saw a figure standing near the window. It was a woman in a white dress, her hair long and black. She was looking outside, not moving at all. Her face was pale and empty. Carla grabbed Pete's hand tightly.
"Do you see her too?"
she whispered. Pete nodded, unable to speak. The woman turned slowly and looked at them. Suddenly, the room became very cold. The woman opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Instead, a loud cry filled the house. It was a cry of pain, or maybe sadness. Pete and Carla stood frozen. They didn't know what to do or what they had just seen. They ran back downstairs, locking the attic door behind them. Both were shaking, trying to understand what had just happened. Later that day, Pete visited his uncle to ask about the woman.
Do you know anything about a ghost in the attic?
He asked. Pete's uncle looked surprised. Then he said slowly,
There is an old story. A long time ago, a woman lived here. She was waiting for her husband to return from America, but he never came back. People say she died of a broken heart right in this house. Since then, some people have seen her ghost. She looks out the window, still waiting.
Pete was shocked.
Why didn't you tell us before?
He asked.
I didn't think it was real, but maybe it is,
Said the uncle. They didn't hear the voice again, but they couldn't sleep well. The house felt different now, not dangerous, but full of sadness. They knew they had seen something real, something that could not be explained. The next morning, Carla looked out the attic window. She wondered if the ghost was still there, watching. The trees outside moved gently in the wind, and the snow was falling slowly and quietly. Pete came up beside her.
Do you want to leave this place?
Pete asked. Carla thought for a moment.
"No, I want to help her,"
She said. She felt a strong connection to the woman. It was as if the ghost was asking for help. They decided to learn more about the woman in the photograph. They wanted to understand her pain. They searched the house for more clues. In an old drawer, they found a small diary. It was dusty and old, with pages turning yellow. Carla opened it carefully and began to read the diary. It belonged to the woman in the photo. Her name was Catherine, and she had lived in the house many years ago. She had written about her husband, Walter. Walter had gone to America for work. He had promised to return soon, but he never came back. Catherine waited for months, then years. She wrote about her sadness, her hope, and her loneliness. I still wait by the window every day. One line read. Carla's eyes filled with tears. She was heartbroken. She whispered, Pete. Pete held the diary tightly.
Maybe that's why her spirit can't leave,
he said. Later, they spoke to Pete's uncle again. He looked surprised when they showed him the diary. He said,
I remember stories about Catherine. She was very quiet after Walter left. Some people said they saw her ghost in the attic window, always waiting, always watching.
Pete and Carla went to the local library. They searched old newspapers and records. They found a photo of Walter. He was handsome with kind eyes. An old article said Walter's ship had sunk, but his body was never found. Maybe Catherine never believed he died. Maybe she kept hoping he would come back. They returned to the house before sunset. The wind was stronger and the air felt heavy. They made a plan to help Catherine find peace. Maybe if they gave her a message, she would go. That night, they went back to the attic. Carla held the diary, and Pete lit a candle. They stood in the middle of the room. Carla said softly,
Catherine, we know your story. We are sorry for your pain, but you are not alone anymore. We are here with you. Walter loved you. He would not want you to suffer. We believe he is at peace now. You can rest too.
The room grew cold again. A soft wind passed through the attic, though the windows were closed. Then Catherine appeared again. She looked at them with sad eyes. She did not speak, but she held out her hand. Carla stepped closer and placed the diary into it. Catherine looked down at the book, and a single tear fell from her eye. She held the diary to her chest, her eyes closing slowly. Then slowly, she began to fade. The room warmed again, and night returned. Pete and Carla stood in silence. They knew she was gone now. They felt a peace in the house they hadn't felt before. The shadows were gone. The next morning, the house felt different. It was brighter, and the air was calm. Pete and Carla walked through the rooms and felt safe. The feeling of being watched was gone. In the attic, the photo was still there, but now Catherine's smile looked softer, more human. They knew the house would never be the same again. It was no longer haunted. They smiled at each other. The ghost had found her peace. Pete and Carla stayed 2 more days in the house. The nights were calm and no voices came. They still lit a candle in the attic each night. It was their way of saying thank you to Catherine. Carla sometimes sat by the window where Catherine once waited. She thought about how deep love could be. Catherine had waited for years, even after death. That kind of love was beautiful and sad. On the 3rd morning, they packed their bags. Pete stood in the hallway, looking at the attic door.
It feels like she's really gone,
Pete said. Carla nodded.
I feel it too,
she replied softly. They cleaned the house and closed the windows. Everything felt peaceful, like the house was finally resting. Before they left, Carla placed a flower on the attic stairs. "For Catherine," she whispered. Pete took one last look at the living room. The shadows were gone, and the air felt warm. They walked to their car. The road was quiet. As they drove away, Carla looked back at the house. For the first time, it looked like a home. They drove for hours before stopping at a small coffee shop. They needed time to rest. Inside, they sat near a fire. Carla held Pete's hand tightly.
Do you think there are more ghosts like her?
Carla asked.
Maybe people who wait too long with hearts full of love, but perhaps they just need someone to listen, someone to help them let go,
Pete said. He reached into his bag and took out the diary.
I brought it with me. I thought someone should remember her story. She shouldn't be forgotten,
Pete said. Carla smiled.
That's a good idea. Maybe we can write her story one day,
she said. As they talked, an old man entered the shop. He had a thick coat and a tired face. He looked at Carla for a long time, then at the diary in Pete's hand.
That book, I've seen it before,
the man said slowly. Carla was surprised.
Do you know Catherine?
Carla asked. The old man sat down and said,
I knew her a long time ago when I was a child. She lived there. My mother worked at the house. She used to sit at the window every day. She told me about her husband.
Carla listened closely.
What happened to Walter?
She asked. The man shook his head and said,
No one really knew, but some say he returned many years later. He was sick and old. He came back to find her, but she had already died. He cried at her grave for hours. Then he disappeared again.
Pete and Carla sat quietly, their hearts feeling heavy.
She never knew he came back,
Carla whispered.
Maybe now she does. Maybe she can finally rest,
Pete said. They thanked the man and left the coffee shop. They drove home slowly. When they reached their apartment, Carla put the diary on a shelf. It would stay there as a memory. Sometimes, at night, she would open the book and read a few pages. She felt close to Catherine that way. Pete would sit beside her, and they would talk about the house, about love, about waiting, and about letting go. The house was still there, but it was quiet now. The spirit was gone. Only the love remained, and in their hearts, the story would never end.